Canine Detection Collaborative, a detection dog training trio with Stacy Barnett.
Hi.
Robin Greubel.
Hey there.
And Crystal Wing.
What's up?
With humor and a big dose of theory, our trio talks practical training advice and features interviews with top trainers and scientists. It's Canine Detection Collaborative.
Hey guys, it's Stacy Barnett from Canine Detection Collaborative, and I am here in Robin Greubel's kitchen, actually. We're all here in Iowa at Distraction Camp this week. This was Distraction Camp 1. We're just wrapping up the first week. We still have a week left, and it's just like, it's been a crazy amount of learning. First of all, before we get to the topic, I am here with my incredible, wonderful co-hosts, Robin Greubel.
Hello.
And Crystal Wing.
Hi guys, I'm also in Robin's house with one door between us. So
yeah,
yes.
It's crazy, right? It's so crazy.
The wayward dog life.
Yes.
Oh, I know, right? I know. So a topic came up at Distraction Camp, and it just has kind of been like kind of tickling our brains a little bit in terms of things that we want to talk about. It's like we talked about this a little bit in our lectures, but we really thought this would be a great topic for the podcast itself. And the topic is all about dog-directed searching. And I think, because when we were just kind of talking about before we started recording, a lot of the discussion we had was about people taking that phrase literally, like as a way of, or just kind of like, it kind of assumes that the handler doesn't really have a role. So we really wanted to explore that topic.
Well, and it's interesting because we have this conversation because as part of the evaluation process, one of the very common, a question that is asked actually when you're getting ready to start your search for your search area for cadaver, live find, whatever.
Yeah.
The question is, what's your search strategy? And we spend a lot of time talking about this is how I'm going to move through the area.
Right.
But very early in my search and rescue career as an evaluator, I would run across handlers said, well, I'm going to follow my dog.
Yep.
And that looks a little bit different when you're talking about a room.
Yep.
Versus 160 acres. And just
I'm sorry. I was like, that. Wow.
Yeah. So just following my dog around 160 acres means that you have an incredibly haphazard coverage on your area, and you can't actually tell me what you have and have not cleared.
Right.
But the other thing I want people to understand is it actually also applies to a room.
Yep.
And so just following the dog around is maybe not necessarily the best search strategy if you need to actually call areas clear.
Yes. Yeah. Well, as soon as you start saying the word call areas clear, that's like a bell, right? That's just like, hey, maybe you need to have a strategy here, because if you know that there's only one hide, go out and look for a scent cone, and but as soon as you have to start making an assessment about it.
Yes.
You've got to know what you covered. Got to know what you covered. And I think that the word dog-directed search, because we see this a lot in nose work where people kind of take it so literally that they just take zero responsibility for the search. And it's a little bit, and I know with some dogs, like with Y, I do follow him quite a bit, but at the same time, I'm also taking stock of where he's actively searched. And I can also pay attention to when I can start to suggest what he needs to work to be able to finish up the areas he did not cover. So sometimes you have to swing the pendulum a little bit more with some dogs, and I get that. But I also know that it can be highly inefficient. So you have to be a little careful with how you apply completely Well, it shouldn't ever, honestly, it shouldn't ever really be completely dog directed. So it just really comes down to, you've got to, I like more like logical, you have to search it logically. It's not just follow the dog. And I think that really, it kind of allows the handler to kind of abdicate their responsibility in the search.
Be more than Uber.
Yes. You are not just carrying the rewards.
And you're doing more than hanging onto the leash.
Yeah.
And one of the things that people start relying so much on that leash that they pull their dogs in particular locations or directions, which I can totally understand. For some dogs, they're like, way too much pressure, don't go there.
Yeah.
But you can still be on the end of a 15 to 20 foot line. That's your safety umbilical cord.
Yep.
And you can still push and pull with your body.
Yes.
And you can actually dismiss half of a room or half an auditorium or half of 5 acres.
Yep.
By how you're pushing your body and your dog through the area. And one of the things I talk a whole lot about body movement, body pressure, body language when we're teaching scent theory. And one of the things that a lot of people end up doing is if their dog is caught in a scent pool, they tend to walk towards their dogs. And I'm like, no, walk away.
Oh yeah. Allow them to dismiss the scent pool.
Right. And
exactly.
Use that tether, whether it's, and some of it might be an actual line. A lot of it is your body pressure. Use that invisible tether to pull them out of the odor pool so that they can move on to the right thing.
Right.
And I think that some of the dog directed search stuff, I kind of did that on one of my last certifications. And instead of and some of it, a lot of it's a training issue, not some of it. A lot of it was a training issue, which I think I've now fixed. But what normally should have been a 2 to 3 minute search took us 7 minutes because I let her chase odor pools instead of systematically searching my cars.
Okay.
And just being like, no, let's knock this out. We're going to go back to systematic search and just not do a Hail Mary and let the dog chase odor all over the place. And because I need to keep track of where has your nose actually been?
Right.
So I have a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You mentioned about pulling your dog out of that area and not necessarily have to use a leash to do that. So because we don't have video, can you describe what you would do?
I would actually turn and walk away from my dog because
but then you can't see what they're doing.
They're stuck in an odor pool. I know where odor's at. Do I really need to watch them get stuck in an odor pool?
So do you watch them over your shoulder or do you just completely walk away?
Typically, I try to walk backwards and see if that will pull them out. If walking backwards doesn't pull them out, and I'm not going to die, right? Because I'm not doing this. I'm not going to trip and fall. So I'll take a couple steps backward. If that doesn't work, I then try and do I don't know what it's called in agility, where you do basically a crossover and you push your shoulders one direction or the other. So I basically, turn to the right. If I think that that's going to be the most helpful for the dog to pop out of the odor pool.
If you do a pull.
I do a pull that way with my shoulders. Yeah. And if that doesn't work, I pull harder that direction and turn and start walking slowly away from the dog.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I have dropped my criteria. I'm not going to let them sit in there and marinate.
Why not just call them out with your voice?
Because the last thing I want to teach them is that my voice matters more than odor at this point. And if I can do it with body pressure, I'll do it with body pressure. If I can't, then I may move into a little, it won't be their name. It might be a this way, which I've taught other places, but I need them to be like, pop them out of that because I don't want to let them marinate in it long enough that they might actually throw their alert or train final response.
So Stacy, do you have it this way as well?
I do. I really try to avoid using their name if at all possible, but I do use it this way, or I use kind of just a little, I talk to my dogs a little bit while they're searching. So they're kind of used to my voice because being an extrovert, I tend to process through my mouth. Surprise, surprise. So I tend to, if you hear my videos, you see that I'm like processing the whole time. It doesn't mean that I'm talking about the search. I'm just kind of processing. So they're used to words coming out of my mouth. And so I can actually use voice to get them out, and it doesn't make a really big impact on them. But I first try to use a little bit of body pressure, or meaning like withdraw pressure, try to kind of lead them out with my body. I might use a verbal. I don't turn around, but then again, it also depends on the type of search area that you're working. So the other thing is that because our hides can actually be very, very close together, because it's an odor pool, I don't know if there's another hide that is somewhere near the odor pool. So I also don't want to lose sight of my dogs while I'm searching.
Right. And keep in mind, if I'm talking about doing a lot of this pressure stuff, for me, that's typically done in training.
Yeah.
And I can dictate whether or not that there's another hide there because I've done really good job at, placing my hides, and that's not what I'm teaching today.
Yeah.
But in a testing or trialing scenario, I work it a little bit differently. And
yeah.
Right. So this comes down to knowing when and where you're at in your training progression for doing odor pools versus teaching scent theory versus blind or facilitated blind hides, and doing multiple hides. Right. We don't throw all of this stuff at our dog at once, which people
no.
Don't do that, please. No. Progression plans are your friends.
No. They are. I remember an odor pool where I had set a hide, and it was a 4.5 acre search. It was a single hide. I knew where it was. I set it. We had like a 4-hour age, and this is the one where the hide where my dogs got an odor was 180 yards based off of Google Maps, 180 yards away from the hide. And I knew it was an odor pool because I set it, right? And I also knew that I did not want my dogs to get frustrated because they had a whole lot left to search before getting actually to the physical hide. So I did not want to sit there and let them continue to work in an unproductive fashion working in this odor pool. So I did draw them out rather quickly. And I think that's one of those training decisions that you have to be prepared to make, and you have to have a plan for. It's one of those things we've been talking about. What's your plan B, and what's your training plan this week, and really making sure people understood like what's actually your objective here, and really kind of quizzing people. And it's one of those things where you need to have what's your plan if your dog gets into a pool, an odor pool, and because if you set it, you really should anticipate if it's going to be there. I had actually started to search that with the intention of encountering the odor pools. So having the plan of getting out of it was a key part of the exercise.
So I have more questions now.
Of course you do.
Sorry.
No, you just gave me more.
Okay. All right.
So, and I know answers to some things, but you know how that goes. I just like to ask the questions to get the conversation. So when you're talking about the odor pools, something that you've really taught me the last couple weeks with the vehicle searches stuff is kind of looking at the body language. Yep. And the difference in the odor pool. Would you give me some examples or things that you've seen from both of you of what does it look like when your dog is in an odor pool versus when they're sourcing the odor? And maybe like specific ones for each of your dogs, or, maybe just generalizations of things that you've seen.
Yeah, I would say it's more general because I see really all dogs kind of doing the same thing. But what I see is I always kind of try to picture, is there a trajectory towards the dogs? Like if the dog is kind of pointing in one direction. So when there is source and it's not just an odor pool, you're going to start to see a pull in that direction. So I look at the dog's body language. Is it all kind of pulling into like a very central location, or is it very general and very widespread? The more widespread it is, and if it just seems to be very random, I'm going to pretty much assume that's an odor pool. As one example.
Right. And actually what I tend to recognize in a lot of dogs as odor pools is, one, they're in an eddy and they've moved through the area in the exact same pattern 2 or 3 times. Or it's the small subtle stuff where they might go into sourcing and active sniffing mode, and they're trying to, close mouth, all of that sort of stuff. And they're going up and down and trying to figure out, you can start seeing the thermals that the dog is catching. And Teresa McPherson said at one point, if you've seen your dog do a behavior pattern at least twice, think about interrupting that behavior pattern on the 3rd time, because whatever pattern they're doing is actually not productive in helping them solve the problem. So if you can introduce through body pressure or anything else a different body pattern that can help them solve the problem, they have learned that changing their body pattern actually leads to solving the problem faster.
So you're saying like step in the way or step back or like maybe turn your body, or what is that what you mean by interrupt?
Yes. So it may be the body pressure that I was talking about earlier with step back, pull with a shoulder, step back, do it this way, something to get them out of that particular section of behavior. We had one student or we were talking about some of it where the problems that we had set up, I could tell how odor was moving. And if they searched an area going to the left as they stepped in, they were going to hit odor pools and skim over the top of source. But then they'd get back to where they started. And just like a vehicle, I said, okay, swing the dog on the end of your line back and go the other direction. And the dogs could then pick it up and source it, and it was perfectly fine. And I think that was one of the ideas that it came to me about the fact that we're there to do more than just follow our dogs around.
Yeah.
We actually, and I absolutely agree, working things on, if you have to work on a line because you're required to, I would work on a 12 to 20 foot line, because the closer you are to your dog, the less limited you are in the ability to see the overall big picture that you might need for scent theory, and to be able to call what's in odor behavior and what's investigative sniffing.
Amen.
So if I'm going to do odor pool type work, would I do that on a longer line, or is it even better to do it offline completely?
Offline.
Yeah.
So like how far away would you say?
Totally dependent on the area and how big your odor pools are. It depends.
It does. One of the most interesting, well, oh gosh, I've encountered so many in competition, but a very interesting example of an odor pool happened. I was just doing it. It was just an NW3 and it was down in Tampa, and it was just a school room. I mean, it wasn't even that big of an area, but it was, I think, a drama room or what, I don't know, something like that. But they had all this like piled up crap up against a window. And then they had some tables and chairs and stuff like that, like for, students to sit at. And I looked at that pile of crap in the corner, and it wasn't really crap. I mean, it was like stuff for plays and stuff, but you know what I'm saying. And but I also saw the windows behind it, and I was working Y, and he was literally all over in that corner. And I looked back and I saw the windows. I'm like, this, there's no hide over there. I mean, you could tell just by the windows. I'm like, it's going to create some heat that's going to pull odor in there. He's giving me a lot of really general information, wasn't being productive at all. He kind of worked at it from a lot of different angles, wasn't making any progress in solving anything. So I literally just stepped to the right and helped to like kind of draw him out of there. And lo and behold, the hide was on a chair, as an example. So it didn't have to be like this big, huge, complicated area. It was just one of these areas where you had the right scenting conditions to create something that was actually really interesting.
I ended up setting up one of the coolest scenting problems in a bathroom with a very hot window, 3 stalls. I mean, it was basically a 15 by 10 foot room.
Yeah. Yeah. But you don't need a whole lot of space.
No, but because of where I placed the hide and elevated wise and all sorts of things, odor was pooling on the opposite side of the room. And it was purposely set that way so that handlers had to work through with a facilitated blind to be able to recognize when their dog was in an odor pool and how to push and pull them out of that odor pool to finish searching the rest of the room.
Yep.
And that's the sort of thing that being able to know that that's what you're setting up and to be okay with the fact that you're not going to have scope creep and be like, literally, it's okay if my dog doesn't get full trained final response or full alert. As long as they get nose to odor, I'm good.
Yeah. So that's also very interesting when we start talking about like dog directed searching. If you went 100% dog directed, the dog could get just stuck in there. And honestly, the longer that dog works that odor pool, and if they don't understand sourcing really well enough to know that that's an odor pool, you are really running the risk of a false alert in that situation.
Yes. Don't hang your dog out to marinate in an odor pool. And everybody gets very caught up. Well, what would you do if, oh my God, in training or in testing or trialing? We're training.
Yeah. Well, training. I'm also talking about trialing because
absolutely.
It's both. It's really, it's both. Right?
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah. But otherwise it's just kind of like, you're just like, like hanging your dog out to dry. It's like, like throwing them under the bus. It's like, okay, it's all you, dude.
Yep. There you go. Have fun with your own bad self.
Fair. That's really not fair to the dog. That the longer they go through that, it's it's got to be frustrating.
So in teaching this, where would you suggest teaching it? Do you think it's like there's a location or a way of teaching the concept easier in some places than others? Like, would you do it with big areas that will create some pools or interiors or vehicles? Like what's your go-to for teaching the concept?
Yes.
This is correct.
So do you have some considerations for each of those places?
She's throwing daggers at me. She's throwing daggers at me right now.
No, I'm not.
Yeah, you are. I can see it.
I actually prefer to teach odor pools. Odor pools in vehicles is nice. Buildings are actually hard for teaching odor pools because your HVAC can mess with what you think is supposed to happen all of the time.
Yeah.
And then I really like teaching odor pools. I have the Quonset. I teach a lot of stuff in the Quonset. And so we are actually able to get those particular things across right there. And I also love teaching them out in our ravines in the woods. Yeah.
So like ravines, like kind of drop off kind of stuff, or like where they can go down in it, or?
Yeah, this is not like, oh my God, you're going to like jump into the woods and all sorts of things. So, or jump off a ledge and die.
Yeah.
Not that type of ravine or anything, but it's more of, gently rolling hills like we have in Iowa, which are not mountains. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Just trying to get the right picture. Cause I think, one person's ravine is not the same as the other.
I would agree with that one.
Yeah. To get those odor pools though, you really need to have aging. I think that's what sometimes I hear a lot of people say, I want to work on odor pools. And I'm like, but they're not aging their hides.
It's really hard to get an odor pool when you only leave your hide out for 30 minutes.
Hey, you could actually get with essential oil in about, but yes, if you just set a hide out and run it,
Right. You're not going to get that.
Luck.
Right. And, but the whole thing is if you're working on odor pools, set out a single hide, let it sit for several hours, and then work it. Some of the odors I work with have to set out for, 24 hours to get odor pools. You guys are lucky with your essential oils. You could leave them set out for 4 or 5 and be fine.
4 or 5 hours, you could get some significant. Yeah.
Right. But then I also think about, you're doing some of your nose work stuff and you're setting out stuff, your certifying officials or whatever is setting the hides out, and you might be the last dog to run 8 hours later.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people don't train that way.
Those are significant pools. Yeah.
They don't train that way. They go, and I have to say, I understand, like I'm guilty in a lot of situations where, you only have so much time to train, and
right. Totally get it.
Yeah, I do too. And I guess what I would try to say is people are like, I don't really have time to age. And I said, well, you've got to incorporate aging into your training. You don't have to do it with every search, but you need to incorporate it because the dog needs to experience it. So
I totally agree. And there's a saying in the military, train like you fight.
Yeah.
And if you know that you might end up at the end of your competition things, you don't have to do them every single time that you train, but it should at least be on your radar.
Yeah.
And that was my next question, is the frequency at which you train these different concepts. So straightforward hide, do you do kind of like an easy, hard, easy sandwich? Do you have recommendations or things you found to be most successful when teaching dogs and other handlers this? Like, do you mix this concept up with another one? Like, is there
not in the same training not in the
not in the same problem, but maybe like, it's kind of good to work on this concept and then the next training, this concept, because they complement each other well.
What I guess my response to that is I'm always swinging a pendulum. I'm always swinging a pendulum, right? I'm always swinging my training pendulum of red versus pink versus how fast you bark versus I'll do nose to odor versus how long you have nose time before you run into odor before, that it's 20 minutes versus 30 seconds. All of those are all pendulums and sliding scales that I adjust depending on training logs and things that I see going on with my dog's training. And there are certain things that if I really, really am lacking the inspiration to set something up, that I always know that full stop, this is one thing that I can always go to.
Yeah. For me, it's always a result of the evaluation of the dog and where the dog's gaps are. So I don't have, like, people always say, well, what percentage of time should I do this? Or what percentage? I never have an answer, because for me, it's always, let me evaluate the dog, see where the dog's training gaps are. Now, based on those training gaps, let's focus our effort on addressing those gaps and filling it and building that up, versus kind of like a blanket, kind of, a certain percentage of each skill. I guess that's kind of where my head goes. So it's more reflexive in some ways, if that makes sense.
Yes, I was wondering, so if I'm teaching the concept of an odor pool and that you have to move out of this area to find a more productive area, would it be a good complement to also be working on teaching the dog how to be directed, to be coachable? So like if I'm hiding the 5 pieces of Kong in a wall and I'm teaching them that by following my motions and following my hand, that's productive for them, and it becomes more of a team concept. And then also really working on driving to source. So those 3 concepts seem like they kind of go hand in hand in my mind. And I haven't done this. It's just, it was hitting me when just listening to this.
If I'm working on driving to odor, at no point do I want to introduce myself into the problem. If that's the lesson for the day, that's where I'm going.
No. I'm saying not all in one lesson. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I'm saying if I'm teaching, so in this week, these are my objectives this week. So in each of the searches that I do, So if I do an odor pool on Monday's search, Tuesday, I'm doing this is how I can be helpful to you. And this is how I can bring myself into the search to show you that I am part of this process. And then maybe on the Thursday search, I'm really working on driving to odor. And then maybe on, what I'm saying? So it's kind of
you could. Yeah.
To help bring the concepts together, cleaner, more efficient.
I think my response to that is, am I at a competent, proficient, or fluent level with all of those things?
And I'm thinking teaching level for the odor pools. And it's teaching level for I'm teaching you how to follow, and that I'm part of your team, and that I'm more proficient at driving to source, because I wouldn't really do odor pools until I was at least proficient, correct?
Right. I would actually also say I'm not teaching odor pools until I have an almost fluent alert or trained final response.
Right.
I don't want to do pools unless my dog understands source.
Yes. So, but the driving to source is that constant lesson that we're always revisiting.
Correct.
Yeah, but there's like, this whole, they're like, yeah, I understand source. No, I really get it.
And I think one of those things, could the dog probably do it? Yes. But when I start thinking about training all of those many things in 1 week or, over several days.
Yeah,
it's a lot. I would also actually rather take a concept like let us be a team player and let me help guide you and things like that, and do that in multiple different scenarios. So take that skill much more from a competent or proficient level into a fluent level before adding in another thing. So it's almost like generalizing one skill all the way up swinging the pendulum on that skill, or pulling that lever almost fully before adding in some of the other stuff. And it doesn't, I guess I think of it that I want to continue my dog's learning and understanding and progress them through a progression plan. And sometimes it might work if you stop and then you go back and revisit it. Okay. But I'm also much more of let's tick it off and get it to a level so that I know if something happens in another place, in another time, if I'm trying to work on something else, I also have that skill that I can drop back on and pull my butt out of a fire.
So that's kind of what I was getting to the point of here is, what are the prerequisites that you would have before you would start working on odor pools? And I know we're kind of getting off the dog directed thing, but if you're letting the dog direct it, they're getting stuck in odor pools, which is what got us here, kind of stuck in a pool.
Well, I guess but odor pools come in different, like you could have smaller odor pools where you can have like a really big, tough problem. So, I like to kind of focus, it's more priority based for me. Like my priority is sourcing. And as the dog starts to get better at sourcing, I might set up a situation where the dog also encounters an odor pool. If I also want to teach the team so that the handler can help the dog through that, then what I would do is set up that situation with a dog that's already really understanding sourcing, then be able to make sure that the team encounters that odor pool, and then coach the handler through moving the dog out of the odor pool if the dog starts to get hung up in it. So I guess that's how I would do that, rather than being prescriptive about what days I'm going to work on what.
I think I was switching to like, what concepts would they have the prerequisites for? When you say the priorities.
It's priority. So, the priority for me is sourcing. Sourcing is a huge priority for me. Sourcing and, sourcing independently. So, and sourcing independently is kind of supersedes taking direction in my opinion.
Okay. And going back to the very beginning of this thing, I was like, I have 2 questions and one I didn't ask. So hasties, are you saying don't do hasties? because
Nope.
that's dog directed, right?
No, hasties are still not dog directed.
What? I know. I wish
know.
the listeners could see my face. Again, I ask questions I know the answers to, but it's, it just
so the
makes us think
answer
about
is in a wilderness setting for the bigger area stuff. My version of a hasty, I still have a search strategy for clearing that particular area, but I give the dog a whole lot more freedom, but I still can tell you what I have and have not covered.
So for those who are on our nosework or sports side, they're not going to know what a hasty is. Can you guys?
A hasty is basically a scan through the area. So what I would consider a hasty in a much more nosework type of scenario is what I do with my bomb dogs and my drug dogs. Is I come up to the door, we sit, we do our start ritual. If I am allowed to, they are working off lead. They get 2 scans of the room.
Okay.
They get typically, and because I've trained it, they'll go one direction one way, they'll go one direction the other way. Then I step in, and because I'm me, I always go to the left.
Okay.
To clear a room. And then is it a prescribed search? As in check here, check here, check here. What people typically think of the walk backwards so you can trip and die type of concept. Right. And so it's not that prescriptive of a search, but what it is because of some of the other foundational training I've had, they now know to slow down and do a more thorough search of any high probability areas.
Gotcha.
Then I go once around the room, once direction, once around the room, the other direction. Then we do the middle, then we're done.
Okay.
And I treat them a lot of the times as a no go back. If I've called a room clear, we're done. We're not going back. Yep. And I really encourage people in training, including the professional dog world, and this is one of the games I'm starting to play with myself, is have I placed things in such a way that does my dog commit to odor fast enough that if we're doing that type of prescriptive search, will they hit on it and I can continue walking and my dog will source it out and do their trained final response. If they miss it, I have additional training to do. Yay, back to Jens. And how hard are you setting your hides? And so that's something I think we often think about, the fact that, our dog just threw it, it's kind of sort of in odor. I don't know. So we're going to continue walking and the dog walks away. And no, the dog should actually, if it's hit a tendril of odor, follow it up and find it. Odor availability is a thing. So I'm not discounting the fact that if odor is not available, it doesn't mean that the dog's a bad dog. It just means that odor is not available to the dog. But we often give our dogs too many second chances because it makes us feel better to reinforce the dog.
Okay. Is there really such thing as a dog-directed search then?
Is there a such thing as a good dog-directed search?
No. A dog-directed search, because I'm thinking about it, and our odor is what teaches our dogs where to search. And if we've been searching any amount of time with our dogs, we already have kind of a thing of where we tend to put odor. So they're probably going to go in and go to those places that have been most productive.
Correct. So through hide placement, no, there is no
taught the dogs
where to search.
We've taught the dogs kind of where to search, where the productive things are. So can it really be dog directed? Because at this point we've taught those skills. So still we're the ones that have directed this. And if you always put it under the chair or always put it under the table, then that's where the dogs are going to primarily go anyway. See where I'm going with this?
I see where you're going with this. And the answer is that works all sorts of great until you go to a trial or a certification and the person doesn't hide stuff like you do.
Yep.
and then you're SOL.
What does that stand for?
You were such a crystal. You really yeah. Let me throw out this little mind bender that you don't really know how to answer. So
yeah. Well, but I think that's, I mean, it's a valid point. That's why, you go to a certification or you go do something else and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, my dog isn't sourcing and working like it normally does. Well, that's because you're boring when you sit where you set your hides.
Or predictable.
Okay, predictable.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I as far as that's why I said a good is there such thing as a good dog directed search? I think if the search is so without putting a label on it, if we go to either, wherever you're going to start your search, right? You just let the dog go and you completely just, I'm going to use Robin's phrase, you stand there like a bump on a pickle. That's one of Robin's phrases. I think, unless the dog's skills are so in excess of the actual search itself, I think if you are looking at clearing areas and not just finding a prescribed number of hides, I don't think the quality of the search is really going to, or the effectiveness of the search is really going to be what you are hoping for. I think you can have something that looks like a dog-directed search, but when you are doing it well, it's the handler influence is often not very apparent. So it can look very much like a dog-directed search, but the handler could actually have a fair amount of influence, and it can be very effective. So I think it just comes down to is the search going to be effective if the handler just isn't involved at all, and generally it doesn't go that well.
So what about the times that I hear you go coach a lot of the students to just stand still, just stop, let the dog do the work?
In those cases, you may be giving your dog the opportunity to learn a little scent theory through the hide placement itself. And you may also be trying to teach your student how not to get in the way. So just because you may not be physically moving at that moment, it doesn't mean that the handler is not a part of the search itself. Sometimes handlers, when they're starting to work their dogs, can have very noisy movement and handling that can actually impede or distract the dog. So in a lot of cases, you just want to kind of take that out of the equation so the dog can actually learn the lesson.
Yes.
So thoughtful stillness and thoughtful movement.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Thoughtful handling.
Got to think about that.
Yeah. Well, we also tend to be very reactive. And if you've seen a lot of, there's this actual thing called the Lackland shuffle.
I've heard about that.
Yes. Which is as the dog is working and sourcing something out, the handler keeps moving back and forth and shuffling his feet, because what they actually are afraid of is that if the handler stops, that then becomes a cue that, hey, you're on source. Well, the actual opposite is true as well.
Yes.
Is if you're standing there shuffling back and forth as the dog is
handler shuffling their feet,
right? That can be like, oh, hey, it's there. Right. So the ideal thing would actually be, if your dog hits odor, you should be able to stay at the same pace that you're continuing to work and move along, and the dog will stop and do their thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but that requires a lot of self-awareness on behalf of the handler to be able to do that, because we get so excited and we get so enthralled with, and I don't care how long you've been handling dogs, the joy of watching your dog source out and alert to odor, that little thrill is always there.
Oh yeah.
Right. And it is the best. And we want to reward the dog. We want to give the dog the stuff because it makes us happy. So having them not succeed is actually punishing to us.
Yeah.
So we then inadvertently do all sorts of stuff. And then they learn that we know things and they cheat.
And that's where I always fall back to for reinforcement. I mean, the action is what's reinforcing. And for so many dogs, just getting the opportunity to search with their buddy, that's reinforcing to them. And just the extra bonus that we give, it's just bonus. Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it may not be enough reinforcement to sustain always going to source, but the act of searching, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think people forget about that part of it.
Final thoughts. What do you say? What do you have? What are your takeaways?
So I think it really comes down to, when you are thinking dog-directed search, try to be aware of the fact that you are a very important part of the team. And this is a team activity. And there's the team just can't exist with just the dog. So if you really want to be effective in clearing areas and you want to be able to know if your areas are if you've found everything, you've really got to be thoughtful in your handling. And it doesn't mean that you have to prescribe exactly where the dog sniffs. It just means that, if your dog is what we call dog directed, I would just do it very thoughtfully and make sure that that you're also part of the team.
I really think just like Stacy, dog directed does not mean that you've abdicated all responsibility for letting the dog move through the area. Being able to call this place clear. I mean, one of the things that I do to my handlers during certifications, especially for doing area search certifications, is I have them pull out their map. And I was like, I want you to mark where if you got called by incident command and told that this space is clear, show me what those are. Because it actually requires a whole bunch of confidence for you to say, no, that's clear. And, there's nothing there. And so I would challenge people to start thinking about that, even in your interiors, of have a no-go back strategy.
Yep.
And how can you efficiently and effectively move through the area? Let the dog do a little bit of self-exploring, because maybe you'll get lucky and run into an odor pool or into a scent plume. Then you can work those out, but then you still have to go back and finish clearing the area. And if you do that as a dog-directed search, you might be there for a really long time.
I want to clarify. So dog-directed is not a good thing?
I think if you think about dog-directed as no handler, it just depends on what you mean.
How else could you see dog-directed? So what are the definitions of it?
I do a generally dog-directed search, but it's not fully dog-directed search with a lot of my dogs. And it depends on the parameters. So it varies.
And I think that
I'm always there. I'm always there. I'm always evaluating and I'm always responding.
So is that dog directed then? If you're responding?
I consider that good dog directed.
Okay.
It's more of a facilitated search strategy. Dog directed is, yes, they need to lead the way. They need to actually go out and drive to source and all those sorts of things. But at some point, I do have to be more than Uber, and I have to be able to call the X number of cars clear. And if they haven't gotten their nose into the appropriate place without my help, I have to step in and do that.
Exactly.
And just allowing the animal to wander around the search area is not an effective and efficient way to clear your area.
Wandering is never good.
Right.
Wandering is never
and
good.
So I don't want to, and I don't care how fast your dog goes through the area, but moving through the area with purpose and not tootling around sniffing dandelions is the type
they're tasty.
I know they're tasty. So that's the type of thing that when I think of dog-directed search, I think of, I'm going to go over here and sniff this tulip because it sounds awesome.
So you both have a little different versions of dog-directed than it sounds like. What I also hear is it sounds like dog-directed is not bad, but it can't be sustained as the only way you search. So within one search, you have dog-directed, you have facilitated. Would you say that there's handler-directed? Is that another style?
Sure. Absolutely. Yep. That's prescriptive. Yep.
Okay. So if you're combining these, then you're saying you'll probably be more successful, and not to rely just on one or another, but to have the skills to be able to switch to any of those.
Yes.
I think you've tied that up in a really nice bow.
Nice.
That's totally agree. For.
Yes. What she said.
Do you like how I just do it all in questions?
Yes.
So you're like,
There you go. Awesome.
You did it, Crystal.
Yay.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for this particular episode of the Canine Detection Collaborative. We look forward to your comments and feedback after in social media on this, and we hope you join us next week.
Stacy's classes. Don't forget her classes.
Oh, shoot. Stacy's classes. Stacy, tell us about your classes.
Oh, yeah. So at least through August 15th, you guys can go ahead and sign up. I have an introduction to nose work coming up if you want to try to get started, get off on the right foot. That's through Fenzi Dog Sports Academy. 6-week class, get you searching interiors and containers with really good foundations. Also have a class on vehicles and exteriors where you get to work through some odor pools and some setups for green dogs. So hope to see you there.
I know you said that, go ahead and sign up, and I'm going to change your word, and you should.
You should.
you should sign up. I mean,
sign
up. You.
Bronze is such a I don't know.
Gift.
It's
it's only $65 for 6 weeks for bronze. It's crazy.
The deal is insane. And if you know anybody out there that's getting started, guess what? What a great gift.
They should sign up.
Yes, should.
All right. Yes. Thanks, everybody. Have a good training week.
Canine Detection Collaborative. We appreciate the time you spend with us. If you liked this episode, not only should you follow us so you don't miss the next one, but please also rate and review us in your favorite podcast app. For info on collaborating with us, go to k9detectioncollaborative.com. That's K9 detectioncollaborative.com, where you can find our socials and pick up our latest monthly freebie. Join us again to talk training in the next episode.